All right, let's get into it. We're going to tackle a word you hear thrown around all the time, but one that's surprisingly hard to pin down. Conservatism. What is it really? An ideology? Just a gut feeling? A political strategy? Well, we're going to try and figure that out.
So that's the big question, isn't it? What does it actually mean to be conservative? Our goal here is to unpack this term, to sort through a really complex and honestly often contradictory set of ideas and find some clarity.
You know, the confusion starts with the word itself. In everyday life, to conserve is pretty simple, right? It just means to keep something safe, to keep it intact. But in politics, it's this whole ideology that was literally born from the fires of radical, revolutionary change. These two meanings seem worlds apart. So how in the world do we connect them?
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with that definition problem, then look at how different scholars see it, pinpoint its explosive historical origin, map out its different branches, its family tree really, and then we'll end with its most fascinating paradox.
All right, section 1. Let's jump right in and tackle that core problem. How do you even begin to define this thing?
I love this quote because it gets to the heart of a key argument. Some conservatives try to root their entire politics in this exact feeling, a simple human disposition to just prefer what's familiar, what's known and comfortable. The idea is that it's not some complicated theory. It's just a natural human instinct.
And this leads us to a huge challenge in understanding it. A lot of conservatives will tell you their worldview isn't a rigid ideology at all. They call it a political anti-philosophy. They see it as just practical, common sense, rejecting all those complex abstract systems for what's real and tangible. But, of course, just because they call it an anti-philosophy doesn't mean scholars haven't tried to nail it down. In fact, they've come up with 5 totally competing ways to interpret what conservatism actually is.
So, what do the experts think? Well, some say it was just a historical reaction by the aristocracy when they felt threatened. Others argue it's just pure pragmatism, doing whatever works, no grand theory. A third view is that it's situational, meaning it's just about defending whatever the current system is from change. Then you have that human disposition idea we just talked about. And finally, some scholars push back and say no, it is a real coherent ideology with its own core ideas.
So, if even the scholars can't agree on what it is, maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe a better question is, where did it come from? At what point did conservatism become, self-aware?
Now, this is what's so interesting. You can trace some conservative-sounding ideas way, way back to ancient Greece or the Middle Ages, but, and this is the crucial part, most scholars agree that modern political conservatism wasn't a slow burn. It exploded into existence, forged in the fire of one single massive event, the French Revolution in 1789.
And this is the moment. The Irish statesman Edmund Burke writes his famous Reflections. And in it, he launches this powerful, direct assault on the revolution's core beliefs, this idea of human perfectibility, the worship of abstract reason, the push for radical equality. And in doing that, he basically laid down the foundation for all of modern conservative thought.
This brings us to a really key insight. If Burke is the founder, who are his descendants? It turns out conservatism isn't one single thing. It's much more like a sprawling family tree, with a lot of different, and sometimes squabbling, branches.
So if we look at this tree, we can pick out 5 main schools of thought that have grown from that original trunk. We've got traditionalist, romantic, paternalistic, liberal, and the new right. Let's do a quick meet and greet with each member of the family.
Okay, first up, the original branch, traditionalism. This is pure Burke. It's all about valuing the accumulated wisdom of tradition over some new abstract theory. It sees society not as a machine you can just re-engineer, but as a living, breathing organism with a natural hierarchy. Now, growing from that same traditionalist root, another branch popped up that was less about politics and more about culture, romantic conservatism. This branch is deeply skeptical of industrialization and capitalism. It looks back with a lot of nostalgia to an idealized, simpler, rural past that it felt was being just destroyed by modern commercial life. Then you have the paternalistic branch, which in Britain is famously known as one-nation conservatism. This whole view is based on the idea of noblesse oblige, basically that the privileged have a duty, a responsibility to care for the less fortunate. So it actually supports an active, almost fatherly state that works to improve things for everybody and bridge that gap between the rich and the poor. Okay, now here's where we get a fascinating fusion. Liberal conservatism borrows a ton from classical liberalism. It loves free markets, individual liberty, and a small state. But it mixes those economic ideas with a very conservative emphasis on authority, tradition, and a super strong framework of law and order.
And finally, the most recent major branch, the New Right. This one's a complex hybrid that really took off in the late 20th century. It's like a cocktail. It mixes the radical free market economics of neoliberalism with the traditional social values, authority, and patriotism of neoconservatism. And this right here, this just brilliantly sums up the deep tensions inside the conservative family. On one side, you have the paternalistic conservatives saying politics, the health of the nation, has to come before pure economics. On the other side, the liberal conservatives argue that the free market is the absolute foundation of a free society. I mean, these are fundamentally opposing worldviews, all living under the same conservative roof.
So let's wrap all this up by coming back to conservatism's most fascinating and maybe most elusive feature, its central paradox.
This is the ultimate puzzle we've been circling this whole time. Seriously, how can you have a coherent set of political ideas and ideology that is built around rejecting abstract ideas and ideology itself? It sounds impossible.
Well, the answer lies in this incredible concept from Burke. When he defends prejudice, he is not defending bigotry or blind ignorance. He's defending what he calls wisdom without reflection, that massive, accumulated, practical knowledge that's embedded in our customs, our habits, our traditions. For him, that practical lived reason is way more valuable than the abstract, theoretical reason of some revolutionary philosopher.
So, in the end, maybe the best way to understand conservatism isn't by some grand vision of the future it wants to build, but by what it seeks to preserve in the present. It's an ideology of reaction, of adaptation, and as 2 centuries of history have shown, it has this incredible, almost paradoxical ability to constantly change precisely so that it can conserve.